Hello and welcome to the Professional Development Edge podcast. We got a great guest here today. We got the president and chair of the Society of Actuaries, also a director at Willis Towers Watson, Amanda Hug. Amanda, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And just to know a little bit about the podcast, it stemmed off of our Professional Development Edge Plus product, which gets you access to all live webinars, recorded webinars, and our great meetings on demand. You also get some outstanding courses available in there and some very dynamic short form video content. So it just was launched at the Impact Conference, and I know a lot of people have been utilizing that for their professional development. So we're really excited about that. So let's dive in here, Amanda. We're going to discuss in this podcast, we're going to discuss how actuaries could build trust with utilizing AI models. And one of the many reasons that I thought you'd be great for this podcast was something you said in your speech when you took over as the president of the SOA about a recent trip that you had over in Uganda. Fascinating trip, but a great story came out of it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, happy to. So had the privilege to travel to Uganda. It was a personal trip to go gorilla trekking, which is where you hike into Bwindi National Forest on foot to try and find a family of gorillas, and then you hang out with them. And it is every bit as unbelievable as you can imagine, being just a few feet from the gorillas. But one of the things that really stood out was our tour guide. His name was Omar. So I was wearing my Society of Actuaries pullover, right? So it has the SOA logo. If you volunteer with the SOA, you get swag. So I was repping the SOA. And Omar came up to me and he said, "Society of Actuaries, that's so cool." And I had to laugh to myself a little bit because, well, I want to make the profession cool. I don't always hear that as the first thing. And my cousin asked him, "Omar, do you know what actuaries do and who they are?" And he said, "Yes, I do. And they're very intelligent." And that's what we hear a lot, right? So I wasn't too surprised. But then he looked right at me and said, "And because you're an actuary, I know I can trust you." And I was almost speechless, right? There I am in the middle of rural Uganda, representing the SOA. He doesn't even know, right, that I'm president and chair. Yeah. And I get to witness this moment about how far the reach and the reputation of actuaries go. So it was a really, really cool moment. Yeah,
that's an amazing example of the global reputation of actuaries. So I think that's a really cool story. Why do you think he thought that? Why do you think that reputation is out there for actuaries?
Yeah, a couple of reasons. I mean, I think about the Society of Actuaries and our values, which are integrity, excellence, and curiosity. And so if you think about everything that we do is meant to be with integrity and with excellence, that's meaningful and that underpins all of our work. And if I think about the code of conduct, right? So that's where the 5 US-based organizations, they ascribe to the same code of conduct. And precept 1, the very first precept says that an actuary shall act honestly with integrity and competence to fulfill the professional responsibility to the public. And so really the work that actuaries do, we're safeguarding people's financial means. We're safeguarding their ability to have health insurance and have general insurance and life insurance and have lasting retirements. And then we're helping our companies, stay solvent to provide that insurance. And then we're helping regulators know that we're going to be there for our consumers. And so I think it's just that long-standing history that we have of delivering services with integrity that has made its way to Omar.
We're talking about building trust, and that's something that actuaries have been doing for a very long time prior to the AI revolution. So what are some ways that actuaries built up this reputation over the years?
Yeah. Well, I like that you mentioned we've been doing it for years because I think we think, AI revolution, it changes everything. And it doesn't, right? It definitely changes things because it's a new technology. We need to fold it in, and it's different than anything we've ever dealt with before. for. But I think we've trained for so long for this moment. And so I think about the fact that, hey, we have rigorous exams that fold in this idea of professionalism and this idea that we have a responsibility to the public. So our associateship professionalism course, our fellowship admissions course, right? Both of those that you take, there's a lot about professionalism in there. And then you and I know, right? Every year you're certifying your continuing education. There's professionalism built in right there. And then we have, I think about the fact that, you know, in the US we have the ABCD, the Actuarial Board for Counseling and Discipline, right? To have that safeguard in place if there is a breach of integrity and of excellence. And so all of these things underpin the work that we do. And then I also think about what have we been doing for years, which is explain and use complex models, bring them to non-technical audiences, help people get comfortable with the uncertainty of the assumptions and the results. And so I think this is just the next layer, just like when we had to start using computers and spreadsheets, which was before my time, but we did that successfully. Exactly. So I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to do this successfully too.
Yeah, excellent. All those different evolutions that arise way back in the years, you know, prepared us for this. Right?
Exactly, exactly.
So now you have actuaries that are learning about AI, dabble in AI. What advice do you have for them to incorporate AI into their everyday processes? What are some tips?
Yeah. The first thing I would say is we need to upskill ourselves. We try and keep the exams as relevant as we can for the moment of the day, but for most actuaries, you know, exams are long gone. And so anytime something new comes out, you have a responsibility to make sure that you know what you're doing. And so plug for PD Edge Plus, for Society of Actuaries meetings. Last year we had a virtual symposium on AI. So just finding these spaces where you can learn and develop yourself, and then getting hands-on with it and trying something. So I think about what are those low-risk ways you can start to use artificial intelligence as an actuary. And so one example might be obviously subject to the constraints of what your company will permit you to do, but can you put a data set in there and ask it to tell you what the anomalies are? You know, and that's your first pass. It's not your last pass. Then you as an actuary can come in behind and do what you always plan to do. But that'll save you some time, and it'll help you learn and get smarter about how do I use AI? How do I prompt AI, right? I also think about going back to our roots and our training in the actuarial control cycle. It is that iterative learning, right? So as actuaries, we set assumptions, we build models, we project results, and then we get real experience that comes in, and we revisit it, and we modify the assumptions. Maybe we change the methodology a little bit. So we should be doing that with artificial intelligence, just like we do with a regular, you know, actuarial quarter-end gap model. And then the final thing I'll say is partner with your technology people, right? We don't exist in a vacuum. We've long collaborated with technology, with underwriters, with product specialists, with finance experts. And so bring those people into the conversation, leverage what they know to make it better.
So with any new process, there's always going to be some challenges and some hills to work over. So what are some of these challenges, and what should actuaries do to be ready and to overcome these challenges?
Yeah. Well, John, in my role as president and chair, I talk to a lot of leaders of large actuarial organizations, and I will say one of the challenges I think is just fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of using the tool, skepticism that it can really do actuarial work. And so I think, how do we overcome that? A couple ways. One, I think about we need to be aware of the risks, right? Risks of hallucination, risks of inaccurate results, lack of transparency. And we're risk mitigators. This is what we do for our living, right? And so we can come in then behind and say, okay, what are some of those mitigants? I'll tell you a cool one. I was talking to one of our AI experts at the Society of Actuaries this past weekend, and he was talking to me about this idea that you can actually tamp down on, there's a technical term for it, but the creativity of the answers that are coming out to you. You can increase the precision and accuracy of the answers that are coming to you. So if you feed a data set of information in, let's say, put some regulations in or something like that, you can ask AI, hey, I only want answers from this body of knowledge. Don't bring in other ideas, right? And so that was such an aha moment for me is, hey, there are controls, right? There is a way to actually do this from a technology standpoint, which goes back to talk to your technology team. So that's the overcoming the risk and fear point. I think the next thing is insurance companies maybe don't move as fast as the technology moves, and so how do we keep up? Again, I would say that goes back to what are those low risk instances where we can start using AI, maybe in parallel along with what we're already doing. And then the third thing that comes to mind is, what are the use cases, right? Every presentation I go to on AI, this is my favorite slide, and I'm furiously jotting down the notes because I want to use it in my day job too. And so some examples that I've seen that I'm excited about, one is writing and debugging code for actuarial models. And so being able to come into an open source actuarial system and have an integrated AI interface where you can say, analyze this code, what are the weak points, or I want to do X, write this code for me. It's going to be a first draft, but then you can use that going forward. Another use case that comes to mind is creating a mix of business. So as a consultant, you're constantly working with new clients, new blocks of business, and you need to understand really quickly, what are the key products? What are going to be the drivers of revenue? Where are the risks for this business? And so being able to give a 20,000 point data set and just say, summarize it for me straight away. Again, you can come behind it, but hey, now I don't have an analyst that has to do that. The analyst can take the output and look at it. So I think figuring out what those use cases are is the fun part, but also a challenge.
All right, so we talked a lot about the professionalism, the ethics of actuaries. That's what we're known for. But then there's also the innovation side, and those two things sometimes you have tough to balance, right? So what are some tips to try to balance both of those two items?
Yeah. So first of all, I would say always go back to our guiding light, right, which is our professional standards, the code of conduct, if you're an SOA member. If you're based in the US, the actuarial standards of practice put out by the Academy. If you're in another jurisdiction, there are other actuarial standards of practice, perhaps the International Association of Actuaries standards. So there's a lot out there, so educate yourself and use that. I had an actuary say to me the other day, hey, I went back and I read the modeling ASOP with a lens of AI and saying, how can I apply this to a new technology in the same way that I've been applying it to my actuarial models previously. So I think that's a really good thing to do. And if you read the ASOP, you get professional continuing education credits. And then I think the other thing is, how do we govern models today? So I think about the fact that as an actuarial manager, if I'm having an actuarial student build out a spreadsheet or a model, I'm not looking at every formula they have. I'm not, reading every line of code. We have peer reviews, we have technical reviews, and then we have kind of consulting reviews where you're coming around it and saying, does the answer make sense? Given the inputs that we put in, are we getting what we would have expected? How does it compare to last period, right? So we have these checks that I think we should continue to use the skills that we have while we're innovating. And so let's test out something alongside a new tool. Do an experience study using your old traditional methods, but then also use your predictive analytics methods, right, that a lot of people are using now, and then also use AI and kind of put the results side by side.
All right, so now let's get into the future. I mean, what's going to happen in the future with AI, and what should actuaries be doing to prepare for this new future with AI?
Yeah. Well, I always love to come back to the Society of Actuaries purpose statement, which is that the SOA empowers our members to drive solutions to life's financial risks. So that's our future. Our members will continue driving solutions to life's financial risks, but hopefully as what I heard someone call AI-enhanced actuaries, right? And so they're still actuaries, that's the bread and butter of what they do, but they now just have another tool in their toolkit. So I would just encourage people, keep learning. Keep digging, keep trying things, bringing this into your repertoire, but also remember that we are risk managers. And so be transparent about when you're using AI, what the risks are, and where you kind of came in and brought actuarial judgment behind it. Because again, John, going back to the purpose of this discussion, right, is trust and the trust that actuaries have. We want to make sure that our policyholders, our companies, regulators, all these parties can keep trusting the work that actuaries do.
Yeah, great comments there. This has been a great discussion. Thanks everyone for listening, and be sure to catch up with us on another Professional Development Edge Plus podcast. Thanks for being here, Amanda.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
The views and opinions expressed in Society of Actuaries podcasts are those of the speakers or authors and do not necessarily reflect the views of their employers or the SOA. The opinions expressed should not be construed as legal or professional advice and are provided for educational purposes only. Please see the terms of use on SOA.org for more information.